Welcome into Pirate Talk. Al Myatt here with Kevin Monroe. Kevin, of course, outstanding defensive back at East Carolina and a member of the Pirate Radio Network for many years. And Kevin and I started Pirate Talk after the 2025 football season, I believe, and this is another edition. And we're looking forward to the 2026 football season. The Pirates will be opening at Alabama on September 5th. And that game is a noon kickoff. It'll actually be 11 a.m. Central Time in Tuscaloosa, and that'll be shown on the ABC television network. Kevin, when you say Alabama, you've got some familiarity. You lived in Montgomery before you moved to Greenville, and you were on the East Carolina team that went to Birmingham to play at Legion Field in 1998, and the Crimson Tide with a 23-22 win in that game. And what stands out as you look back on that matchup?
Well, Al, I've tried to erase that game from my memory, so I appreciate you bringing it back up. But when I look back on my career, it is probably the most regrettable loss. It's right up there, kind of 1A and 1B to us losing at UAB in that same stadium in 1999 when we were trying to play for share the conference championship with Southern Miss, and we finished that season with our second loss. But yeah, that Alabama game, just we had them. I mean, sold out stadium in Birmingham. Sean Alexander is their running back. He's All-American and goes on to have a long career in the NFL. And they just, they didn't have it that day, and we played well defensively, especially. Offensively, they were tough. I mean, they were tough. Well, our offense against their defense. Defensively, they were able to hold us down, but so we struggled to score offensively. But when we were on the field defensively, they didn't get a whole lot. And what it really came down to was a kicking game. And I hate to put it on one individual thing, but we had, I want to say, a missed field goal. Then we had a blocked extra point, which they then returned for a 2-point score. And one other thing happened in the kicking game that really cost us. So you have 2 or 3 kicking mistakes and you lose 23-22. But that kind of says it all. I mean, I remember Forrest Foster had a pick 6 in that game. Like we played really, really well. It was a game that we should have won. And it's just disappointing to play against a name like Alabama and come away with the loss when you probably were the better team that day.
I think Alabama got out to a lead and East Carolina came back, as I recall, in that game. And somebody from one of the Alabama media asked Coach Logan after the game, said, we wanted to get them overconfident and come back, and they did. And as you mentioned, that blocked extra point and return for 2 points turned out to be the difference in the game.
Yeah.
And I think East Carolina scored 3 touchdowns and kicked a field goal. Alabama scored 3 touchdowns, kicked their extra points, and had that return and won by 1 point. So
yeah.
I think Andrew Bays would tell you he was in pursuit on the extra point that was returned. And if I've heard Andrew Bays correctly over the years, Alabama stepped out of bounds on that return. So a lot to consider in retrospect, but it is what it is. And East Carolina will make the trip again September 5th to start the 2026 season. $1.5 million guarantee for the Pirates as they play in Tuscaloosa. And Kevin, as far as East Carolina is concerned, that's been the focus. Blake Harrell has not talked at all, from what I've heard in preseason, about who they're playing. It's about East Carolina being the best team possible and developing during the preseason. The quarterback battle continues. Mitch Griffiths, transfer from Texas Tech, who started his career at Wake Forest, and Emory Williams, who came in from Miami. They've got a different group of skill sets. Mitch is more of a running threat. Emory is more of a pocket passer, but they've both been getting reps with the ones during preseason practice. And, it's interesting enough that Alabama has a quarterback competition going on. So nothing is established there. They've got Mack and Russell Mack is the senior. Russell is a sophomore. Russell may have more athleticism, but Mack has been playing for Coach Kevin DeBoer. He actually transferred from Washington to Alabama. He originally signed with the Huskies when Coach DeBoer was coaching that program. So a lot to be decided in terms of offensive leadership going into this opening matchup.
Yeah, I think in this era of the transfer portal, every team is going to have a quarterback controversy, at least to kind of start preseason camp, unless you just have an incumbent that's been the starter for 2 or 3 years, because, you're signing big time players every year, and then you're also getting big time players in the portal. So there's always going to be this level of competition really at every position. But specifically at quarterback, I know Alabama has signed a top quarterback or has a top quarterback committed through like 2029. And so they're always going to have good players there. And so there's always going to be competition. So we'll see how that pans out. I think, it's interesting to talk about the $1.5 million payday. I think East Carolina is probably a little bit better than Alabama fans think. And you hate to pay a team that's going to come and put pressure on you game one and have you sitting on the edge of your seat in game one. I think it'll be a very close game in the first half, and we'll have to see how the Pirates are able to hold on late and how they're able to play the second half. But I think this is a Pirate team. We'll get into more specifics later, but they always play good defense, and they're always going to show up and play good defense. So getting this quarterback situation figured out between Williams and Griffith will be a big deal. As you talked about, the differences between the two of them. We've had all different types of quarterbacks at East Carolina. We've had those guys that are, smaller, that can run around a little bit and make plays with their feet. We've also had the bigger guys that can sit in the pocket and throw the ball downfield. And so Pirate fans, know a little bit about what we're looking at between the two of those guys. And it just reminds you just a couple of years ago when it was a quarterback controversy and one of those guys had to step up and end up being the guy. And so I expect, in the next, few days that one of those guys will kind of be named the starter, and we'll see if both plays, at Alabama. It's going to be a high pressure situation. So even if you're the more talented player, can you handle, playing at Alabama in a sold out stadium, and how do you play in that kind of conditioning? We had to go to Michigan a couple of years ago. I think the Pirates held up fairly well. I mean, they were outmatched in the end, but I think they held up fairly well as it pertains to the crowd and the noise and being on the road. So I expect nothing less this time around. I do think that both guys have started in big time Division I games before, so they do have that experience, and that's going to help a lot.
I agree. And we've had situations where there's been a quarterback competition, as you alluded to, and Shane Carden did not start initially, emerging from a quarterback competition at East Carolina, and neither did Caton Hauser. But both of them eventually won the job. So whoever's on the field first at Alabama, no guarantees that they're going to be the guy as the season progresses. But let's talk about depth at skill positions for East Carolina, because that has the potential to take a lot of pressure off the quarterbacks. I think there's some very capable performers in that running back room. You've got T.J. Engelman, the top returner, Marlon Gunn, and we'll talk more about his situation as he potentially comes back. And you've got Michael Allen, young man from Greenville that started his career at NC State and ultimately transferred to ECU from Marshall. And then you've got Ashton Gray, who came with offensive coordinator Jordan Davis from North Texas. And all of those guys are capable, and you can rotate running backs. You can't trot quarterbacks in there on alternate plays, but running back has a lot of depth, it would appear. And then receivers led by Brock Spalding, the top returner, and Ray Joseph. He's created a lot of excitement, transfer from Miami.
Yeah, I start with running back. I mean, T.J. Engelman Jr. is a guy that, just as a spark plug. And we got the chance to see him play quite a bit last season. And he's got that burst of speed that you want to see from a running back. He's strong, and he's also very elusive going up the middle and around the edge. And so lots of excitement surrounding him. but he may be third or fourth right now going into the season in terms of depth, because you've got older, more experienced guys that can get it done. Michael Allen, everybody knows him from Greenville, from J.H. Rose High School. He's had kind of a journeyman career, moved around a few different schools. This may be his third or fourth school, but East Carolina recruited him and offered him out of high school, and he's finally getting a chance to finish his career at East Carolina. And so he's a big, strong back that also has speed. You expect to see a lot out of him, kind of finishing up. Obviously, he wants to go to the NFL, and so he wants to have a breakout year. Ashton Gray, the kid coming over from North Texas. We talked about it, in the pregame, before the call, about how good of a bowl game he had, and the prospects for how good he can be, how high his potential is. Good speed, very elusive back, and so I think Pirate fans will like him a lot. And then you throw in Marlon Gunn, who we don't even know what the situation is there yet. I mean, we're hoping that the situation with the class of 2022 guys, Gunn and Lampley and Danka, get the opportunity to play. What kind of shape are they in? Will they be able to play week one? That's all still up in the air, but we know what we're going to get from Marlon Gunn. I mean, he had a fantastic career, had a great bowl game against Pitt as well, and so we'd love to have him back there again. You talk about receiver. There's a lot to be said about Ray Joseph, the transfer from Miami, coming over with Emory Williams. People like him a lot. They think he's got big time speed potential. You lose a guy like Anthony Smith, and then you replace him with a guy like Ray Joseph. They think he can be a good downfield threat. Brock Spalding has kind of been the stalwart, here at East Carolina for the last few years. It's exciting to have him back. He can kind of do it all. He can catch the deep ball downfield, but he's more of your possession receiver. But he also is strong, can break tackles. And then Landon Sides coming over from North Texas. They're saying a lot about him. And so I think, just the starters alone will be really, really good at receiver and at running back. And the backups sound like we did a good job in the portal and it had built some depth at both those positions. So skill-wise on offense, I think the Pirates will be very, very good. We just hope that one of the quarterbacks steps up and can make it happen and get the ball to him.
And defensively, we tend to take that side of the ball for granted to an extent, perhaps, because they've just been very consistent over the years with Sam Harrell as Blake Harrell rather as defensive coordinator, and he has actually called the defense in both of the bowl victories in the last 2 years under the circumstances that developed. But just a very sound defensive coach. And I think there's good personnel on both fronts. Offensively, got some transfers in there. On the offensive line, the coaches speak highly of that group. And then the defensive front, you add in J.D. Lampley potentially, and then Sam Danka coming off the edge. And we both know what those guys can do. And if they can get in game shape in a timely manner, they certainly should contribute, barring any obstacles in the legal process.
Yeah, on the offensive line, you've got two guys that are juniors that are probably going to see a bunch of time in Weaver and Neolian, but then you've got three other seniors, and so it's just junior, senior laden. Three of those guys are transfers. As you mentioned, the coaches have been saying nothing but good things about them so far in this preseason camp. So I expect the offensive line not to be an issue. And going into last year, it was kind of a big question mark heading into the season after losing two seniors the year before that were big-time players. And so I think to go into the season and not have to worry about offensive line play is a good problem to have. Hopefully they are able to establish some depth at those positions. But I think that they definitely have, five guys that can go in day one and play successfully. The defensive line is full of transfers. The whole defense is full of transfers and guys that were younger last year. I think there was only one returning starter or one guy that came back that started any games last year. So you're going to see a whole new defense for the most part. But I think the coaches are excited about this defense. As you mentioned, the front line there, the front three or four guys, big, strong guys that are athletic, that can get pressure on the quarterback, that can stop the run. And then the linebacking crew, you got DJ Johnson back. He's one of those guys that started some games last year. So expect him to kind of be one of the leaders there. but they've got some transfers in Law and Bowden, I think that they're excited about as well, and some other guys at the linebacking crew. And then in the secondary, 3 or 4 transfers, both at corner and at safety. And so we don't know a whole lot about these guys aside from what we've seen in early spring, summer practice and fall practice, and what the coaches have been saying about them. So it's going to be, in this day and age of the portal, it's going to be a brand new defense out there for Pirate fans to see and get used to and to know and love for this season, because there's a lot of new, exciting players over there.
That's right. And we really don't know anything until that first game. Kevin, as you're well aware, high schools play scrimmages before they actually play a game. And the NFL is in the midst of its preseason schedule right now. College, it's just kind of you scrimmage against your teammates, but you don't hit anybody else until it actually counts. And I've wondered for years, why don't colleges have a preseason scrimmage? They do it in basketball. Duke is going to play Tennessee in Durham in a preseason game this year in basketball, but football is not happened. It's just not in the traditional framework.
No, that's a great point, because obviously injury is a concern, but injury is a concern at the NFL level, at the high school level as well, and they still find a way to do it. So I think it might be definitely something they should consider, because those guys get tired of hitting each other every week before the season starts, and it's just an opportunity to get out there and play against somebody else and try to make something happen against somebody that's maybe not wearing your same colors. And so you worry about showing too much or getting too deep in your playbook and things like that, but I'm not concerned about that. I think that they could find a way to kind of run basic things and just give players an opportunity to get out there and go through the offense, go through the defense, try to get better. I'd love to hear Coach Harrell's response to that, to see if he's ever thought about it or talked about it, and and see where his thought process is with it. But I think it's a good idea.
Well, I know that Green Level has probably had some preseason scrimmages, Kevin, and that's where your younger son, Butter, is playing. You were telling me that he's had a significant position change going into the upcoming season.
He has. I think that it was caught us a little bit by surprise, caught us off guard there, because they had a returning starting quarterback, who would have been a rising junior, who had a solid season last year. He broke the school single season passing record, and then just decided, in the spring of last year, he had a really good baseball season where he was a sophomore. He was all conference pitcher. And I think he just started to see that he might have a better chance of playing college baseball than college football. And so he transferred to a local baseball academy here in Raleigh area. And it's the summertime. So it's not like you have time to figure out who's going to be another quarterback. So it's got to be somebody that's on your team or somebody that moved into the area. And nobody moved into the area this all season. And so my son was the middle school quarterback for 2 years. For similar reason, the starter got hurt. He got the job and became quarterback. And he can throw the football. I think people will be surprised that he throws the football very well, but also he can run it out. Obviously being an athletic wide receiver. And so, he's going to be the starting quarterback this season. But he's being recruited as an athlete anyway, and so he'll have a chance to have the ball in his hands a lot. And we'll see if he can make something happen. They only won one game last year. They went 1-9, so can't get much worse, right? So hopefully he plays well and can lead them to a couple victories.
Well, I think we both were of the opinion last year that they needed to kind of lighten up on that non-conference schedule a little bit. So maybe that will happen for the Gators there at Green Level. Marcus Monroe, your older son, is at Stanford and true freshman. And tell us a little bit about how things are going with Marcus.
Yeah, been there since middle of June, and just kind of getting his feet up under him, did kind of the off-season training. He took 2 summer school classes that he did well in, and then preseason camp started. So he's now in week 3 of preseason camp. Lucky for him, they don't have a ton of depth at tight end. I think most teams keep about 8 tight ends. Some teams have 9 or 10, but most teams keep about 8, and they have 5 at Stanford. 6, on roster, but one of them has an ACL that happened in the spring, so they're down to 5. And in some instances they play 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends at a time, or 13 personnel, which is 3 tight ends at a time. So, I'm hoping because of their lack of depth, he'll get an opportunity to make the travel squad and see if he can get some games. And special teams will be the key. But he's learning the playbook, and as a tight end, it's tough because you have to know all the blocking schemes that the offensive linemen have to know, and you have to know all the receiving plays that all the receivers have to know. So it's a ton of studying as a tight end. It's hard for me to relate to him because as a corner, I actually didn't know if I was in zone or man, and I was good. Like it wasn't a whole lot of playbook studying for me. And so for him, he's always in there taking notes and going through all these checks and all that kind of stuff. So I feel kind of bad, but he seems to be picking it up, and he just got there in June, so we're talking about 2 months worth of playbook study time. So it's coming along. It's coming along. They play against Hawaii on the 29th, and that'll be a home game for them. And then they play week 2 against the national champion runner-up in Miami, also at Stanford. And we'll be up there for that game Labor Day weekend. So excited to see him and see his progress. And also, he stepped on campus at 214 pounds 2 months ago. He weighed in the other day at 230.
Oh, so, wow.
He's been eating.
They must be feeding him good there at Palo Alto, I believe.
Absolutely. So he's they warned them at about 235 eventually. So it looks like he may get there before kickoff. So it's been going well for him.
Very good. Kevin, of course, we'll keep track of what's going on with East Carolina football. We'll plan another Pirate Talk next week, perhaps, and then we'll morph into the pregame podcast as the Pirates get ready to take on Alabama. But enjoyed talking with you as always, and we'll look forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Al.
God bless.